Hi guys, and welcome back to JavaScript Playground. In this video, we will learn how to add HTML elements using JavaScript. Let's say we have this list and we want to add a new list item to it. But before we get into this, let's visit the DOM tree. As you can see in this tree, the list tag is represented by an element node and its value is represented by the text node. The text node is attached to the element node and the element node is attached to the parent node, which is UL in this case. So to add a new element, we need to create an LI element node or a list element node and add a text node to it. Then attach the element node to the UL element node. So let's begin. So this is my HTML code and this is the ID for our unordered list. I've already added a JavaScript file here, so coming here. Now to create a new element node, DOM gives us a method called createElement. So let's use that. So because this element is a DOM element, so we have to use document.createElement, and this method, it accepts the tag name. So in our case, we want to create a list item. So we can pass li here. But if you wanted to create some other HTML elements, so we could have passed it here, say for example, span or paragraph or h1, etc., etc. So for now, let's bring it back to li because we want to create a list item. Let's store it in a variable, say new list element. Let's print it in the console. So coming back here, let's inspect. As you can see, we've got this empty list element printed here. Now, to add text to it, we need to create a text node, and for that, DOM gives us another method called createTextNode. So let's give that a try. Again, this is a DOM method, so document.createTextNode. And this method, it accepts the string value that we want to pass or the value which we want to put in a list element. So let's say list item 3. Now we need to attach this text node to the new list element. And for that, the DOM element has a method called appendChild. So because we're talking about the DOM element, so new list element, because this is where we want to append a new child node. So dot append child, and this accepts the text node or whatever child node we want to add here as the parameter. So let's pass it here. Let's save it and let's try to print it. Let's save it and let's check our console. So as you can see, we've got a list item with a text list item 3 wrapped inside it. Now say we wanted to add an attribute to this newly created node. So we can simply use the concept that we learned in one of the previous videos. So selected element dot property name. So let's try adding an ID. Let's say item 3 and let's print this after this. Let's save it, and as you can see now our list item has an ID as well. Now say you want to add new elements on every button clicks, and every time someone clicks on this button it keeps adding a new item, and these new elements should have text which says list item plus current item number. Say the third element should have list item 3, the fourth list item should have text list item 4, and so on. So let's give it a try. So before we can perform any action on this button, we need to select it. So the ID is add item. Let's select this button. So where, say btn add. So document.getElement by ID. Let's pass the ID here. Now we want to perform some action on click. So we are looking at an event listener. So btn add event listener. So let's pass the event type, which is click, and let's add a anonymous function here. Let's trigger an alert just to verify that this listener is working or not. Let's say clicked. So coming back, now when I click on this button, it shows this alert box with text clicked. Alright, so coming back here. Alright, so now what we want to do is on this button click, create a new element. So let's move this line here. So document.create element. So we want to create a list element. So that's why li. And then let's add text node to this. So the selected element dot append child document dot create text node. So to create a text node, we use this function as we just saw. Let's remove this alert. Let's bring this ID also in here. And let's bring the console log as well. Alright, so let's see what's happening here. So when this button is clicked, we use the DOM method create element to create a new list element. We store it in the variable. Then let's bring this out, say text node. Then we create a text node. We pass the text here, so let's list item 3. And then we append this text node as a child in new list element. And we give an ID to the list element. Let's save it, let's check here. So when I click on this add list item, it prints this list item here. Alright, so instead of printing it here, what we want is we want to append it to the unordered list. So we just saw how to add a child to an HTML element. So we use this append child method and we pass the node that we want to add. So first let's select this list. So var, say list document.get element by ID. Let's pass the ID here. Now we have access to this list. So instead of printing it, we can do list.append child and pass a newly created list element here. So new list element. Let's save it. Coming back here. And now when I click on this button, it adds the list item. And when I keep clicking, it keeps adding new items. But we don't want this. What we want is all these new items to have different count. So it should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. So let's refresh this. So if you look at this list, there are 2 list items. So 1 and 2. So if the next element comes, it should be list length plus 1. So that should be 3. And if the element comes after that, again it should be length plus 1. So that would be 3 plus 1, which is 4. So now what we need is we need to somehow get the length or number of elements in this list. So coming back here, you already have access to this list. So this DOM element, it gives us access to a property which tells the number of children. So child element count, let's try printing it. So console log. Let's print it in here after appending. Let's save it. Now when I click on this button, 3 is printed in the console. When I click again, 4 is printed. When I click again, 5 is printed. So after it adds the element, it prints the updated count or the updated length of this list. Alright, so what we want to do is, instead of hard coding this, append a value here. So list child element count plus 1. So whatever is the length before we append the element. So if you see here, let's refresh this. So before appending the element, the length is 2. So 2 plus 1. So that's why we're doing child element count plus 1. And when this gets appended to the string, so it will come out as list space item space 3. Similarly, for this ID, we can do the same thing. Let's save it and coming back here. As you can see, we get list item 3. And when I click again, it gives us list item 4, list item 5, and so on. If we inspect, so all these list items have an ID. So item 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. So this append child method, it adds the element as the last element to the parent node. Say you wanted it to be before a certain sibling. In that case, you can use another method provided by DOM, which is called insert before. This method accepts two parameters. First is the newly created element, and second is the sibling element before which you want to add this newly created element. So let's give it a try. So coming back here, so this append child was adding the newly created list element at the end. Say we want to add this element as the first element. So that means before this list item. So what we can do is, let's add an ID here. Say item 1. Let's select this item. Say var first item. So document.get element by ID and item 1. Let's comment this line. So instead of append child, now we have to use another function, insert before. And as I mentioned earlier, it accepts two arguments. First is the newly created element, so new list element. And second is the sibling element before which you want to add your new list item. So we already selected this first item. So let's use it here. Let's save it and come in here. Let's open our console. So let's click on this add list item. And as you can see, the first item is added on the top. Now when I click again, next item is added as the second element, but before this list item 1. Similarly, the next item is added before this list item 1 and so on. But what we want is the new list item to be on the top, not just before the list item 1. So instead of hard coding this, what we can do is get the first item dynamically. So let's give it a try. So on every button click, we can get the first item. So this DOM element, it gives us another property which returns the first element. So let's give it a try. So list dot first element child. So this property, it gives us the first element child. So let's try printing it here. So let's say first item, and let's remove it from here. Let's save it. Let's give it a try. So when I click here, it prints item 1. Similarly, when I click again, it prints item 3. When I click again, it prints list item 4, because before adding this element, list item 4 was on the top. Now, I have a little homework for you guys. Try creating this to-do app where you can enter some text here, say apple, and it adds to the list as the last element. Similarly, say buy mango, and when you hit enter, it adds as the last element. Similarly, say buy shake, and when you hit this button, it adds at the end. And if you click on this button without entering any text, it shows you this alert, enter a valid to-do item. Similarly, if you hit enter without entering any text, it shows you the same alert which says enter a valid to-do item. Give it a try, put it on CodePen, and share the CodePen URL in the comment section below. And that's a wrap for today. I hope this gave you a better understanding of how to add new HTML elements using JavaScript. But if you have any doubts or queries, feel free to drop a comment below or reach out to me on Twitter. I'll add my Twitter handle in the description below. Bye and take care.